Welcome, everyone. If you're joining us today, you're probably the kind of learner who appreciates a direct, no-nonsense look at the data. You want to get straight to the core of a subject. Well, today's explainer is going to be a uniquely fascinating journey. We're investigating a piece of source material that is literally as deeply perplexing as it is minimalist.
So handsome.
This call is the highlight of my night.
Mine too. Sweet dreams, my love.
I mean, it's a profound, almost universally appealing sociological premise, right? We all want to know what actually happens behind locked doors when absolutely no one is watching. Let's find out.
Okay, let's dive into this, because here is the entirety of the transcript we've been provided. Read it with me. Hey, heat, nan, dan, heat, de, hey, heat. Yep, that's it. That is the complete, unfiltered digital phenomenon we're looking at today. It's our sole piece of evidence, and we're going to treat it with the rigorous, structured analysis it absolutely demands.
To make sense of this, we'll take a highly structured approach. 1. Expectation versus reality. 2. The lexicon of solitude. 3. Rhythmic patterns in isolation. And 4. Decoding the final heat.
Section 1. Expectation versus reality, the sociological promise. The promise of discovering what humanity truly does behind closed doors is a massive hook. It suggests a revelation of our secret habits, our unguarded moments, maybe even our most vulnerable human behaviors. But when we place that ambitious title right next to the actual transcript, we see a stark, almost absurd juxtaposition. On the one hand, you have this sweeping promise, what people do when they are home alone. But on the other hand, you just have a string of repetitive, seemingly nonsensical words. The disconnect is incredibly jarring. We expect a documentary narrative, and instead, we're handed a cryptographic puzzle of fragmented syllables.
And we really cannot ignore the incredible irony of the source's name here. Global fact. That implies a stated piece of objective truth that applies to the entire world. Yet the channel presents us with a sequence of words that is overwhelmingly bewildering and entirely subjective. Is this supposed to be an objective truth about human nature? Are we all at our core just walking around empty houses whispering these specific words?
Moving into Section 2, the lexicon of solitude, breaking down the vocabulary.
We're going to treat this transcript as a sacred text that requires intense, data-driven microanalysis. So let's quantify exactly what's happening. Now, what's really interesting here is the sheer, overwhelming statistical dominance of a single word. Out of this tiny snippet of text, the word heat appears 12 separate times. Hey trails significantly with just 4 appearances, and down appears exactly twice. So we're looking at a vocabulary that is highly concentrated and intensely repetitive.
If we map out the complete word distribution, the picture becomes even stranger. Alongside those top 3 words, we have to account for these bizarre solitary letters, a single N and a single D. Look at how they just sort of drop into the mix. They stand completely alone, lacking absolutely any context or linguistic support. Are they typos, abbreviations, or are they essential phonetic markers of being home alone?
When you boil it all down, the entire text relies on just 5 distinct linguistic components. That's it. Think about the gravity of that for a second. The source material is claiming to represent the isolated human experience, a state of being that poets and philosophers have literally written volumes about, and it reduces it to a lexicon of merely 5 elements. It is an aggressively minimalist view of the human mind at rest.
Section 3. Rhythmic patterns in isolation, the chronology.
So these 5 elements aren't just thrown together randomly. There's actually a sequential flow. If we map this out chronologically, assuming a normal pacing of human speech, a really clear structure emerges. At the very beginning, at the 1-second mark, we have the invocation, hey. It's a calling out. Around the 5-second mark, we hit the descent, nen, down. And finally, by the 10-second mark, we reach the culmination, which is just a relentless repetition of the word heat. The text literally moves from an outward greeting to a downward motion to an endless static fixation.
Breaking this exact sequence down reveals some very specific, strange interruptions. It starts normally enough with the 3 heys, but then it pivots sharply on that solitary nen. From there, it transitions into down. Then, we enter what we can really only call the primary heat loop. But notice that even the loop is unstable. It gets briefly, almost violently interrupted by the fragment de hey before locking right back into heat.
And this brilliantly illustrates how we can read these seemingly random words as literal behavioral steps of solitary human existence. Step 1 is vocalization. You arrive in the empty house and you say, hey. Step 2 is orientation. You set your things down. Step 3 is fixation. The mind empties, the environment takes over, and the only remaining sensory input is the temperature, the heat.
Which brings us to section 4, decoding the final heat, the core obsession.
We have to focus exclusively on the text's most inescapable feature, 12. I just want to let the sheer volume of this number sink in for a moment. The text does not end with a conclusion, it ends with an obsession. In a transcript of just 21 total distinct utterances, the word heat makes up more than half of the entire experience. It just completely swallows the back half of the text.
So, it begs the ultimate question. Why heat? Is it a literal reaction to a thermostat being left too high? Is it a metaphorical representation of rising anxiety or claustrophobia when you're left alone with your own thoughts? The source material offers absolutely no answers, only the relentless repetition of the word itself. The temperature is literally the only thing that matters. So, the crucial point is how the final stretch devolves completely. Notice the loop here. Heat, 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 hey, heat, 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 heat. It's an almost unbroken chant. Whatever pretense of varied human behavior existed at the beginning of the text is just gone. The solitary human is now functioning like a broken record. You can clearly see that collapse of structure when you compare the parts. The first 8 words are varied and introductory, moving between different concepts like hey, down, and in. But the final 12 words? It's a singular, pure obsession, dominated almost entirely by heat. The structure of the transcript doesn't just change, it disintegrates. Speech devolves into pure rhythm.
If we're to take this global fact at face value, the reality of being home alone isn't about watching TV, reading a book, or pacing the halls. It isn't complex at all. It's a minimalist descent into rhythm, isolation, and temperature. We strip away our complex societal vocabulary until we are left with nothing but fragments and sensory loops.
Which leaves us with a truly fascinating question to ponder. When the doors are locked, when the phones are down, and when there is absolutely no one around to judge us, is this rhythm the true, unspoken soundtrack of our empty houses? Do we all, in the deep quiet of solitude, devolve into this absurd, repetitive loop? The next time you find yourself entirely alone, listen closely to what you say out loud. You might just find yourself repeating the same word over and over again. Thanks for exploring the data with me today. Keep asking questions and keep looking closely at the details.